Study session for the Aurora City Council for Monday, March 11, 2024. Is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman.
Here.
Councilmember Bergen. Here. Councilmember Coons.
Present.
Councilmember Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Hancock.
Here.
Councilmember Drinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Oh, here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Bergen. Present. Councilmember Preston.
Oh, hello. Yes.
Just kidding, just to
Mayor Pro Tem Zavodek.
Here. There's no mayor updates. Are there any issue updates? Councilmember Sundberg.
I just want to point out that we did some math on the extra security in preparation for the chaotic Monday meeting. All the extra police and security totaled nearly $17,000. Just put it out there.
Councilmember Bergen.
I just want to say thank you to our police officers that were there.
Further discussion? Seeing none, adoption of the consent calendar, item number 2A through 2C. Is there an objection to moving the consent calendar forward? Seeing none, items number 2A through 2C will move forward. Federal State Intergovernmental Relations Committee report, March 1 meeting. Liz Rogers.
Everyone, Liz Rogers, Intergovernmental Relations Manager. So the FSIR committee meeting met on March 1st and took position on several new bills. You can find this on page 106 and 202 in the packet. So support positions were taken on House Bill 1322, Medicaid coverage, housing, and nutritional services, and Senate Bill 85, sales and use tax rebate for digital asset purchases. Opposed positions were taken on House Bill 1239, single exit stairway multifamily structure, House Bill 1304, minimum parking requirements, and House Bill 1313, concerning measures to increase the affordability of housing in transit-oriented communities, and a monitor position was taken on House Bill 1296, modifications to the Colorado Open Records Act. Are there any questions or discussion on the legislative positions?
Questions or comments? Do we have to take action?
No, unless you wanted to call up an item.
Okay,
I don't have any items to call. Does any member?
very well. Thank you, Liz. Item number 3B, individual council member statements before other legislative bodies. Councilmember Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to have George talk about this subject because I just want to make sure that everyone is clear on when they go down to the Capitol. I just want to just say something because I think there's been some rumblings about that I'm trying to micromanage, and I'm not trying to do that. I just ask for members, if they go down there, you don't have to tell me what you're doing. Just say, hey, I'm going down to the Capitol, because I'm down there for other things, and sometimes I get questions about, well, there was something sent or somebody else came to testify, and even though you're doing it on your behalf, it just, sometimes I get the question, well, Councilmember Lawson, are council members divided on this? And there's certain questions that I need to address. I'm just asking for a respect factor, just to say, hey, Angela, I'm just going down there. And that's it. So I just want to have George, because we had the conversation at the Pfizer meeting, to put in what council members can do when they go down to the Capitol for clarification. This also goes for city staff as well. So, George, I'll let it go to you. And I just want to say one thing too. Councilmember Coons has been very good about this. She notifies me in text or whatever and just tells me that's what she's doing. So I appreciate that. Sure.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. George Kumantakis. I'll be here on behalf of the City Attorney's Office, and I was asked to present this to all of you tonight. The question came up at the last Pfizer meeting on individual council members, or the mayor for that matter, taking an independent position that's different than what the Pfizer committee has decided, or council as a whole. And I included in your packet Appendix G for public communication from the council rules. And you are allowed individually to take a different position, but you need to be clear, one, that, I mean, you can share your title too, say that I'm a council member with the city of Aurora, but that's not the city's position. I'm taking a different position than the city is taking. So I included that part of the rule in your backup for you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Good, thank you. Any questions or comments? I just would say, when in doubt, if it's a gray area, just contact, I would contact Councilmember Lawson anyway. I'm guilty as charged because I had a meeting with Councilmember Bergen and the governor's staff over her modular housing resolution, which had previously been approved by council, so it was the city's position. And then I went with Councilmember Hancock to meet with the governor's staff again over vehicle registration enforcement, which was also, she passed a resolution in council, so it was a formal position of the city on that. And then, and I testified on behalf of Metro Mayor's Caucus, but still, I should have reflected that on construction defects.
Mayor, just a
Lawson.
comment, I mean, and we just have some really controversial bills that are up this year, and same in the past. And I also sit on Dr. Cog, where we're also taking some positions of the city. So it really just kind of puts me in a predicament. And I'm just asking, I don't care about what your testimony is, just saying, hey, Angela, I'm just going down there, just so I just
Sure.
know.
Absolutely. Further questions or comments?
Mayor,
Councilmember Coombs.
so I just want to clarify, because it was mentioned with respect to staff as well, like what are the rules, if any, regarding staff members testifying in their individual capacities about bills?
I know that's created trouble in the past, but I didn't specifically prepare for that tonight, so it was more reviewing the council rules and addressing that specific question.
I think that,
No, I just-
you know what, that is a problem in the sense that, I remember Chief Acevedo going, testifying in various times. I don't know if it was a position of the Association of Chiefs of Police. I don't know if it was a position of the city. So, let me ask the city manager on that.
So I think you all have passed a resolution or something like that, and I think if staff are going to testify, we do also need to check in with the Pfizer chair, and then also we are supposed to be testifying on positions that are consistent with the city positions if we are testifying in our professional capacity. So obviously, everybody has their First Amendment rights and can speak as an individual, but if they're testifying in their professional capacity, they need to be consistent with city positions.
Mayor.
Councilmember Zvonek, then Councilmember.
I'd just say a great example of this is actually Judge Day, right? I mean, there was times last year when I was on the Pfizer committee where there would be things he was working on with colleagues across the state, but he would always come and brief us and tell us what he was working on so that we were connected, and we were connected to what he was doing, and he was, making sure that we were aligned with what the position he wanted, or the position he wanted to take. He's a great example of what I would hope other staff would.
Yeah, I think where it would become problematic if there were a specific position that the city had taken on legislation, and you had a member of the staff go and testify against it. Let's say the city's position was for it, and I think it's very difficult to distinguish with a staff member in what capacity they're really speaking of. I mean, my advice would be not to do it. If it's contrary to the city's position, it would be not to do it yet.
I think it's respectful. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Coombs.
So I guess my concern with that is just that, as Jason said, people retain their First Amendment rights. So as long as they're not saying, I'm so-and-so, such and such city staff member, and they don't give the impression that they're testifying on behalf of the city, I think it's very important that we not do anything to chill the free speech of our staff when they're operating in their individual capacities.
I think let's just say it needs to be very clear for staff, and it needs to be very clear for members. If you're testifying on a bill that is not the position of the cities, in a direction that's not, you really do need to identify yourself as not representing the majority of the city council. Further questions or comments on this?
I think
Councilmember
just
Sullivan.
that thinking of the chair or that respect goes to other committees as well. For example, if someone is chairing the Public Safety Committee and they want to take on a project with the police department, it might be good to go through the chair, right? Or if I'm chairing the Water Committee and someone wants to do a conservation thing, it's good to let me know.
Okay, that was negotiation. Mayor, I'd like a word, please. Where's Marshall? You can attest, Marshall, you can attest. That was a negotiation after the public feud.
Yeah.
It was public, so the chair of the water committee was a part of that.
Mayor, rather than
Public.
circumventing the chair.
Nobody was circumvented. This was a friendly agreement that is actually going to be something very, very good instead of refunding the drought fees, which the chair of the water committee was against. So this was a friendly amendment that I made, and he's more than welcome to attend. And if he'd like to say a few words, he could as well.
Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember.
So in seriousness on that subject, if folks are working on things that are under the purview of the Housing, Neighborhood or Community Services and Redevelopment Committee, it would also be helpful if you're working on affordable housing, homelessness, youth violence, and, I mean, a lot of the stuff folks are doing on youth violence is already through city programs, or redevelopment planning, it would be helpful for that, because we did get a redevelopment proposal that hadn't come through our committee and that we were just briefed on this last time.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Okay. And then an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, between the City of Aurora Youth Violence Prevention Program and Cherry Creek School District for data sharing resolution. Austin Burdette, Youth Violence Prevention Program data analyst.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you for all your help and everything. We appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate you a lot, Marshall.
It'll be a great day.
It will be. I hope the chair of the water committee is there.
I'll be there. Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Andrea Wright, and I'm the coordinator for the Youth Violence Prevention Program. The purpose of this agreement is to allow student data and information to be shared in order to reduce and prevent youth violence. This data will also be used to identify trends and connect students to services that will mitigate existing risk factors and increase protective factors. This includes data on truant, chronically absent, and expelled students, student discipline, fighting bullying, harassment, drug violations, grades, and attendance.
Are there
We currently have the same contract with APS, so we're just doing this with Cherry Creek.
That would have been my question.
It's the same
Are
thing we
there,
did
are
last
there
year.
any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The 3D increase the E911 surcharge imposed on phone service. Scott Newman, Chief Information Officer.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Give me just a moment to bring up my presentation.
While Scott's pulling it up, we also have Tina Bonetta who's online.
Okay.
Tina is currently sick, and I gave her permission to not get you all sick, so
Okay.
she is joining us remotely.
All right, thanks, Jason. So, just want to make a brief presentation on this request we are bringing forward in collaboration with the team at the 911 Center, as Jason mentioned, a request to increase the E911 surcharge that we collect here at the city. So I want to start off with a little bit of history. The surcharge is collected by the city on all wireless, voice over IP, or landline phones, and that's not just here at the city. That's a standard across the entire state of Colorado. The last time that we here at the city increased our surcharge was in the year 2014. At the time, the state cap on the 911 surcharge was 70 cents per month per line, and there was a special process that you had to follow through the PUC to request variation from that max. So the city went through that process in 2014, and it was increased to $1.20 per line, but it has not changed since then. In 2020, the state passed a new law, which actually took effect in 2021, where on an annual basis now, the PUC adjusts that upper threshold. So where it was established at 70 cents per line, the PUC now goes through a process. They check the consumer price index, other factors around inflation. They hold an open proceeding, and they make a recommendation for what that upper threshold should be without requiring a special intervention from the Public Utilities Commission. So for the 2024 calendar year, the PUC has conducted that process, and the maximum threshold is now set to $2.05 per line. Some of our historical uses for the fund, and this is as established in state statute. The primary uses of the fund include providing technology and support to receive the dispatch for, and provide the dispatch for emergency 911 calls. The costs associated with the telephone service itself, as well as the emergency notification system, and payment for the provision of basic emergency service, which is essentially the calls coming into the center. If the money is available after and beyond those uses, then it can also be used for public safety radio equipment outside of the PSAP. This is an important distinction because they do distinguish between the equipment used inside the 911 center versus what's used out in the field. And in personnel expenses that are necessarily incurred for the PSAP or the governing body to provide emergency telephone service, so anything above and beyond that's directly tied to emergency telephone service. Just last month, the state, both houses of the legislature actually passed a new bill that further expands the uses of those funds. That includes an e-training program specific to folks who are involved in the provision of 911 service. So that could be a lot of the administrative folks and support folks and TINA staff, as well as the IT staff who provide the technology that provide provisioning that service. TINA was very, very involved in this process at the state level. So TINA, anything specific to that statute that you would like to add? And Tina, if it looks like you're speaking, but we can't hear you. Okay. Well, Tina will come back for some reason, was it not? Oh, have it. Just a moment, Tina.
Bless you.
Pass the class.
Did she sneeze on you? Yeah.
No, she just threw the box.
Asked if he could have Kleenex, and I swiped it over. I was a little too strong.
There's some latent anger there. What I do,
Okay, Tina, can you try again?
what I didn't do, I don't know.
Sorry about that. Picture, but no sound.
All right, let's keep this moving. We'll try and figure out Tina here. Let's keep
Okay.
going. Okay.
Are there any?
Sorry, Tina.
Are there any questions or comments on the surcharge? Okay.
Sorry, Mayor, I still have the rest of the presentation.
He's got to get to the pointy end of the stick. All right.
Ask. Say, I'm not done, Mayor.
So I apologize that we're missing Tina's comments on this. So our current needs out of the 911 fund, again, the funding level has not changed in 10 years. So we do replace we maintain and equip the mobile data computers that are used by first responders out of this fund. So all the police and firefighters' computers that are used in the rigs, and to do all their response, this is for their mobile dispatch as well as some of their field reporting. In 2025, we have to negotiate a new support agreement with Motorola, which is the back-end radio system used by all the first responders across the city. That agreement that we have in place today was established in 2015 when we first acquired the Motorola system, and so it is now due for a renegotiation. We're expecting that cost to be around $553,000, but we are going to be working with Motorola and looking at providing the same approach we did this time and doing it through a lease purchase that will extend that cost over a period of time. The more portable radios and the mobile radios used by the police officers in the field, those are currently due for replacement. So again, those were acquired back in 2015, and Motorola has informed us that those devices are no longer under support. So we will need to replace those. And unfortunately, that cost is nearly $7.3 million. So again, we're going to have to look at amortizing that cost over a period of time. In 2028, the radio consoles used in dispatch itself will also need to be replaced, and the current projection for that is $2.3 million. The 911 call handling system, we today are using the same system that we've had in place for well over 10 years. It's had upgrades throughout that time, so it's still current, but it's still the old approach. So one of the things, and I wish that Tina was able to speak, one of the things that really hit us during COVID Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, she typed a couple
She
comments.
typed, and if you go to the
There was
chat,
something in the
you can
chat.
see that, and she
Yeah,
typed
about
in there.
language and AI. Accessibility.
It's to the end of the slide.
You can pull it up on. Sorry.
Presentations.
So as Tina said, the legislation is important to give us the opportunity to, so this refers to the newest legislation that was just passed. It's important to provide us the opportunity to modernize our existing technology, but it's equally important to invest in our team and our team members' skill set ongoing. One moment, please.
Okay.
And our ask is opening the door for us to bridge the language gap with AI-assisted technology. So again, as the council is very much aware, the very diverse population we have in the city and all the number of spoken languages, being able to leverage some of the new technology around being able to interface with those callers. The new call handling system, which is what I was just about to speak about, will resolve the call surge and overwhelming in the center by leveraging AI. So they'll be able to identify the officers that maybe are closest to the call, differentiate. So as an example, if we get a lot of an accident on the highway, there may be 50 to 100 cell phone calls all about that same accident. Being able to leverage and identify that, hey, the chances are these calls are probably related because of their geographical location to that call, whereas this one on the opposite side of the city is probably something completely different. So let's try to prioritize that call and answer those instead. She's typing as fast as she can.
Okay, I think we're caught up. All right.
Yep, go Tina.
Very dedicated.
The only other piece I would add to the call handling system that's really hit with COVID is that the system we have in place today can only operate either out of the primary or backup center. It's an on-premise system, it's not cloud-based. So the solution that we're actually looking to replace it with is cloud-based. So anywhere in the United States, we could actually take 911 calls and process those and get support. And that also provides additional capabilities. So if we have to leverage support from outside PSAPs, so Grand Junction maybe, all the way down in Durango, some of these other locations, we'd be able to do that. They'd be able to access our system just by being able to get on the internet. So there's a lot of value to that. That's an actual increased cost, though, annually of $330,000 more than what we're paying today. There's also an increase to, or an update to the protocol response intake system that's used by the dispatchers now. That's for the police, fire, and medical priority protocols to be able to help triage a call and classify it correctly. Those costs are coming in about $301,000 higher. And then as Tina mentioned around some of the other, and apparently I am not sharing anymore, so as Tina mentioned around some of the other next generation technologies around AI and the language detection capability.
Councilmember Barker?
So if, and I agree with increasing the cost hasn't been increased, and we have so many needs, from our 911 dispatch center to provide better efficiency and more, the better technology. So all that surcharge increase all goes towards 911?
Correct, yep. The state law is very prescriptive around what is an acceptable use of those phones. So we make sure that we designate and segregate. This portion is directly attributable and relatable to 911 versus these are the ones that are not.
And that's reflected in our budget?
Yeah, so we have a separate fund. It's the E911 fund for exactly that reason, because the funds have restrictions how we use them. We separate that out so that we can do full accounting to make sure that we're complying with all the legal requirements.
Thank you.
Okay.
So last slide, Mayor. So to recap, we are actually requesting council approve a 59-cent per line increase to the surcharge. That'll bring us up from $1.20 to $1.79. At the time we put this presentation together, that was the statewide average. About all the 911 authorities across the state, the average surcharge that they're collecting was $1.79. The PUC only allows under the statute, I'm sorry, it's not the PUC, under state law, this can only be amended or adjusted twice per year. And that's February 1st or June 1st. So since the February 1st amendments took effect, the statewide average is now $1.91 per line. But again, we're requesting the $1.79 per line increase. This would have to take effect June 1st if we wanted to make it effective this year. That's why we're bringing it forward today, so that we have, the PUC also has requirements around timeline to notify the carriers so they can get notifications out. So we would need to move this forward to council the next session in order to make that timeline. The budgetary increase is estimated about $1.4 million for the remaining 6 months of this year, and then it would be an additional $2.8 million in 2025 going forward.
Remind me when the last time was we raised this?
It was in 2014.
Okay. Councilmember Summer.
Does this apply to cell phone lines as well as landlines?
Yes, it does. Now, there is a little distinction if there are folks that have prepaid service, and that is a different rate that the state established, that they pay for that one-time charge at the time they sign up for the prepaid service. But if you have a regular cell phone line, then yes, you are collecting that rate.
Further questions or comments? Is there any objection to moving this forward? Seeing none, it will move forward. Thank you for the presentation. Repeal of marijuana tax revenue fund excise tax. Councilmember Curtis. Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a brief introduction on this item. This item would repeal the existing 5% excise tax on marijuana cultivations in Aurora. Currently, we have a 5% tax rate, excise tax rate on marijuana cultivation, so that is only on the production side. Currently, we are collecting approximately $680,000 annually on those cultivations. Just for comparison, there's several other statewide jurisdictions, including Denver, that does not have a excise tax. Denver has a 0% excise tax rate on marijuana cultivations. And there's a couple different reasons why I think we should do this. One is a philosophical reason. I think it is wrong to tax one specific industry differently than we tax other industries. We should not tax the cultivation of a specific product separately than we do other products. I think that's wrong. Also, I think lowering or eliminating our excise tax rates has the potential to incentivize these businesses to relocate into Aurora. I've spoken to some that would like to not be in Denver anymore. We have the industrial warehouse space for them to relocate into Aurora. And then lastly, ultimately, taxes on a product anywhere within that product's life cycle are passed along to the consumer. And when this product is charged, so we have 13 cultivations in Aurora, when this tax is applied to these products and it's ultimately passed along to the consumer, it makes the price of that product more expensive. If we are able to reduce this excise tax or eliminate this excise tax, it'll make that product less expensive and ultimately make our sales here in the city more competitive, hopefully increasing our sales where we do collect revenue from. I know there's some questions about where we're going to generate, or I should say not generate, where we're going to make up for this lost revenue. One of my ideas is to work with our marijuana enforcement division and investigate some potential regulatory cuts. I've already started talking to folks in the industry and have planned to discuss with our marijuana enforcement division areas where we can address common sense regulatory cuts. One good example, Aurora is the only municipality in the entire state, and I want to repeat that, we are the only municipality in the entire state that requires off-site backup CCTV storage. What that means is we have to have folks from our marijuana enforcement division to go and inspect this off-site backup storage of CCTV storage of retail stores. That's one example where Aurora is not only an outlier, we are literally the only jurisdiction that is requiring this. I want to investigate other common sense regulatory reductions that we can make in our marijuana enforcement process to offset this revenue. We may not be able to offset all $680,000, but I think we can offset quite a bit of it. I want to remind folks, when Amendment 64 was passed back in 2012 by voters, there was really a big rush to What I would say was really over-regulate this industry. There wasn't a lot known about it. Folks didn't know how to respond or react, and there was a lot of regulations put in place that I think now, in hindsight, most people, most common sense people recognize were wrong. We don't treat it like alcohol. We don't treat it like cigarettes. We don't treat it like really any other product that is somewhat similar. We regulate it much further than we do those products, and so I want to work with our marijuana enforcement division to find ways that we can reduce that regulatory burden and offset a lot of that revenue that we are generating. The other piece that I want to point out on that revenue, this is a lot different than our retail sales tax. Our retail sales tax is dedicated to specific uses, such as our homeless funding. We just went through that process. This is a little different. Our excise tax goes into the marijuana fund. Our marijuana fund is dedicated to all different things, rec center, debt payment, a variety of other sources. And in information I've gathered from the budget office, if this revenue were to no longer go in there, we would still be able to maintain the payments that are needed in our marijuana fund for several years before any balancing measures were needed. That would give us time to address some of the regulatory things that I know we're going to be able to address. So that's kind of a brief description. Just want to thank Councilmember Drinsky. Worked with her on this. She was supposed to be listed as a co-sponsor. She wasn't for some reason, but thanks for her work on this as well. I don't know if Councilmember Drinsky, if you'd like to say anything.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, can I?
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I just want to say on this too, that a big concern of mine has been, with our rec centers and our parks and rec spaces, and I've had meetings with Laura, and I think we are on the same page now about getting our parks and recs, getting our rec centers as a whole to start operating more like a business, and hopefully, I think the agreed goal is that at some point in the nearer future, our parks department and our rec centers are not going to need any kind of stipend from the general fund. I've identified a whole bunch of areas where we could be making more money, where we're losing money, leaving money on the table, and really I just believe that the assets that we have in this city should be able to sustain themselves. There's no reason why they shouldn't, and so the funding that goes from this, that goes towards the rec centers, I have zero concern about with the plan that we're working towards moving forward on, that our rec centers won't be able to self-sustain.
If I, to remind the members quickly, I think the rule that was passed earlier, that if there is a reduction during the budget setting process that you did in terms of the per capita, no, not per capita, the employees, on the employees, the head tax, that was done during the budget setting process, and so, but outside the budget setting process, there needs to be an offset that's identified. And so I'm glad that you're working on offsets, but but I believe that it's required to have offsets to move forward at this time. Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah. On the rec centers, my understanding is, this is about debt. Right now, those monies go towards the debt for the recreation centers, the central and the southeast Aurora Recreation Center. It doesn't go towards operating costs.
Correct.
Operating costs come out of a different fund. So when we're talking about it won't affect operating costs, the money doesn't go there. So I believe debt would be prioritized for the city to pay. My concern is, what about road maintenance? Because that was part of our marijuana funds, and I know that's a huge priority for our citizens. I get calls all the time about road infrastructure. I know we have to build up Aurora, but even beyond that, there's still additional needs that are not projected for 2024 or 25. So I have a concern that we would lose revenue by removing this excise tax. So could you address the road maintenance?
Sure.
That is currently going towards that.
If you're okay with it, I will share my screen here and just give you all a kind of a visual of
just real quick while you're looking that up, the excise tax was put in place immediately, right? Like the 5%? And we have not, and we still have 13 licensed cultivation facilities, so I don't think it's deterred anybody from coming to our city.
Well, there's 173
Oh, please,
members, so
Councilmember.
appears that
Well,
it has.
I don't like them being all over
Please,
Aurora.
okay.
Well, I don't like taxes, so.
Okay, please. Okay,
So what this is showing you there, and I don't know if, who's got the screen there, if we can move the pop-up there, it's a little tough to share that. So what this is showing you here, just to kind of give you a quick orientation, the top group there, you'll see the sales tax, 5.5%, and then if we have any fund balance, we earn interest income on that, and then we have the excise tax, and then we also get the state share back. So those items go into what we have commonly referred to as, sort of the general bucket. And then as Councilmember Gardner noted, there are two specific set-asides. There's a sales tax of 2% on top of that 5.5 that council has dedicated for homelessness, and then another 1% that has been set aside for youth violence. So you can kind of see all of those together in terms of how those revenues have been collected and what we're forecasting them into the future. So for this portion, I'm going to go ahead, and since council's taken action to set aside the homelessness and the youth violence, I'm going to limit our discussion from here moving forward to those items that are generally available. So there we go. Okay, so what this now shows you is that top group should look very similar. That's the same revenues. And then what this is showing you is how we are expending those funds. So you'll notice that line in the middle of the screen, debt service for rec centers. As we've noted, we've got about a $4 million payment for debt service on the 2 recreation center that we have built, the Southeast Recreation Center and the Central Recreation Center. And then we do have about $6 million that we are currently taking out of the marijuana tax revenues for transportation projects, and those are improvements as well as road maintenance. And so that's what we're doing there. And then as Councilmember Gardner noted, we do have a fund balance right now that if the approximately $685,000 a year of excise tax were to go away, we're reflected that up there as going away mid part of this year. So we figure by the time the ordinance went into effect, we would probably turn that off on or around 1 July. And then you see that revenue going away in the future years. And so then we start pulling down on fund balance. And then by about 2028, fund balance is almost fully expended. So we would have to take some kind of balancing actions between now and 2028 in order to balance that loss of the $685,000.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bachelor?
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
So I just want to clarify, this is a tax. So if we eliminate it now, we cannot bring it back if we find that we haven't been able to offset it without sending it out to the voters.
Correct.
Bring it back.
Further questions or comments? Councilmember Gardner, is it your desire to withdraw this, to work on it in terms of the offsets, or
Not
you
my
want to go
desire to
forward with it
withdraw
now?
tax cut. Nope.
Okay, Councilmember Combs.
I thought we were in questions only. I think we've had a conversation about hypothetical offsets. If we see that those actually offset the cost, then I think we can have the conversation about cutting the tax. And similarly, if the rec center operations can actually pay for the debt service on the rec centers, then this would be a reasonable conversation. But until we actually have numbers, hard numbers identifying
Well, I
that
think that's
debt service
demonstrated in here.
can be paid
Tell you
for,
recognize, thank you.
and that the offsets that you've talked about are actually going to offset this cut, I don't think it's responsible or reasonable to be bringing this forward. I think we should wait until we have that information.
Councilmember Gardner.
Mayor, yeah, I think that's demonstrated in here that the marijuana revenue fund can withstand the reduction of this tax. So I disagree with your assertion.
But
And I'm more than happy to make all my colleagues vote on the record on a tax cut.
Sure.
So I gladly would bring it to the floor.
Okay. I think according to the rule, I think you have to basically show where it's coming from in the same fiscal year that the tax code is in place.
Mayor, it's
Councilmember
going to come from the marijuana revenue fund. That's where it's going to come from. It's a special fund.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Councilmember Summer.
I had been thoughtful towards this industry too. In fact, I had them come and bring a presentation to the study session and learn about how they're struggling in so many different ways, right? This is a golden goose with a lot of hands wrapped around its neck.
Yeah.
I think it's pushed sales onto the street. But I think more importantly, this sends a signal that Aurora is a business-friendly place, especially as we stand in contrast to the state legislature in Colorado that has some crazy things coming towards our businesses. This further solidifies the fact that Aurora is a good place to do business.
I think the fundamental problem with the marijuana industry, not just in Colorado but across the country, is how the federal government it's under Schedule 1, which is as a dangerous drug. Heroin is under Schedule 1. The Biden administration has initiated a policy change that's going through the administrative process to move it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And in Schedule 3, it completely changes the world for this industry. Because right now, under federal policy, I mean, it's not recognized as a legitimate business, and that lack of recognition, that they're not allowed to do any deductions in terms of their expenses. So instead of net revenue, it's the gross revenue that's taxed. And so, I mean, that's just killing the industry. And so I believe that change is going to be made. I hope that it'll be made. I know there's a little resistance from DEA, and I hope that goes away. But it is moving through the process, and that will completely change the economics of the industry. I mean, they don't even have access to banking services right now because it's federally regulated. So this 5% is, in the scheme of things, is not an impediment to this industry. What is an impediment to this industry is federal regulation. And so I'd be happy to join you, Councilmember Gardner, in a resolution to push forward to urge the Biden administration to expedite the process of moving marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. But until then, I just think that I disagree with your analysis in terms of saying that we're going to take from an existing fund where this revenue goes. I think I'd like to more specificity in the cuts. Further questions or comments? And as to Councilmember Bergen's statement that, we've had this tax since the beginning, since it was legalized, and now we have 13 grow facilities here. So that doesn't seem to be an issue. Further questions? Councilmember Vaughn.
I'm generally supportive of the idea. My one concern is that we've continued to have conversations about the capital needs that we have in the city. And my worry is if we keep having special carve-outs for different things we're cutting a little, and I know they're all small, and then I would love to vote for them all, but then all that's going to eventually do is lead to a situation where when we have to go to voters and ask for a sales tax increase to fund massive capital infrastructure, it's going to be bigger. The need is going to be bigger because we've created a carve-out for one thing after another. And so that's my concern. If I knew there was never going to be a chance that we're going to have some sort of tax increase on the ballot in order to fund our infrastructure, I'd be for this. But I know that conversation is coming, and it's probably a needed conversation. And so this just puts us further behind, just as the other ones did. And I voted against and spoke against the other ones at the same time for the same reasons. Because I think if we're going to do comprehensive tax reform, we shouldn't do it this way.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, is there opposition to moving, I don't remember, what is it, 4A, or 3E forward? Mayor's opposed. Lawson. Bergen. Zavonic. Hancock. Medina. Maria. Majority have arisen in opposition. Item number 3 will not move forward. Item number 4A, ARPA reallocation from Aurora Day Resource Center, ARDC, or renovations to safe outdoor space operations. Emma Knight, Manager of Homeless Behavioral Health.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is a just recommendation by staff to reallocate ARPA funding that had been allocated to the Aurora Day Resource Center for safety renovations, to reallocate it to the safe outdoor space on Chambers and 6. And this would be for continued operations for the Restoration Christian Ministries on whose property that safe outdoor space is on. This funding was originally, it's $200,000, excuse me, this $200,000 was originally given to ADRC, and we've been trying to spend it for a few years, and it just has not been going through. To date, we've only spent $2,641 on this. And with the navigation campus moving forward, staff thinks it makes more sense to be moving these funds to restoration to continue operations at the safe outdoor space. This would go for operations on the RCM side of things, for staffing, security, and utilities. We are adding we have additional shower trailers at this site, which will increase the amount of utilities that are needed for that site. And originally, we were planning on giving $350,000 of earmark funds from the congressional earmark funds from Congressman Crow, and those have still not come in, so we have been behind quite a bit on funding for RCM, and this will help to continue running this vital service that aids in our camping ordinance and allows us to have folks from camps go into shelter. And we are just asking that this be approved as proposed. Any questions?
Councilmember Bergen.
So in our last disbursement of funds, we gave $175,000 to Restoration Church, and then we approved another $25,000 to them. And just because we're not renovating the Day Resource Center, I don't understand why we would just, we have additional monies and we're going to now just give it to Restoration Church that we already gave almost what they requested. So why is, if we're not getting the $350,000 from the congressional grant, from the grant, what's the holdup? Have you guys contacted, Senator Hickenlooper, Congressman Crow, Senator Bennett? And I don't think the city taxpayers that have dire needs for road maintenance, for roads, for medians, for sidewalks, for fences, all kinds of needs, that we have to keep telling our residents, I'm sorry, we don't have the monies to take care of your needs that you pay taxes on for our city, to go to this, just to move money because we haven't spent it. I find it.
Liz, let me go to
I just find it
Roberto Venegas first, and then I'll go to you. Roberto?
If we can hear him, hopefully. Same issue. It sounds like it's on our end, Roberto. Sorry. So we'll maybe try and answer it, and you tell us if we get it wrong, Roberto.
Liz?
Yes, so the city staff has been in contact with HUD and Congressman Crow's office on this issue several times. We've made several inquiries. The grant is currently in departmental review at HUD in process 2 of 3. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to identify a specific timeline of when they are going to be approved, but we are on the final stages of it. Unfortunately, it's just taking a lot longer. This is a problem with every municipality that has requested funding from HUD, not just Aurora.
So to further answer that, we didn't give them as much funding, and they didn't request funding from the city because they were understanding that this congressionally directed spending would be coming from Crow's office. So they didn't ask for what it actually would take to run the security and utilities and trash and things like that on the site. And so this is really bridge money until that money comes in. So hopefully we'll have the grant from HUD completely shored up and ready in the next couple of months. But right now, restoration is depending on that money to come through. So they're using money from their, congregation and other places. But because this was 2021 money, we were expecting it to be in last year. It never showed up. And so for this year, we didn't give them as much money through marijuana funds because we knew they were getting the other money. So once that money comes in, we won't need to spend the ARPA funds.
Right, but we gave them almost $200,000 already for staff and security. That was in their last proposal. And every year, it seems like nonprofits keep coming back to us for more and more money, yet we have pretty much the same amount of homeless people that we've had for many, many years, and we pay for the pallet homes that are on their site. This is a lot of money, almost $200,000 additional on top of the $200,000. That money, isn't it allocated to them, the 175 and the 25, so they can use that right now? They're not like hurting for money right now.
They are definitely hurting for money right now because they haven't been able to pay bills even from the end of 2022 because they were expecting this congressional money to come through. So
they have not paid their staff?
They have been, we were in such a bad situation that they hadn't paid the Portelet company, and we had to shore that up at the end of last year.
It's an earmark, right?
This is earmark money, yeah, that hasn't come in yet.
It's processed through HUD, is that what you're saying?
Correct, it's being processed through HUD and it's held up in HUD, and so we're trying to figure out how they could do their, utility costs now. And so the suggestion and recommendation is to use ARPA money that was allocated to a different project for this to keep the operation running until the congressionally directed money comes in. So we did provide other money to them. It costs more than that. The security is pretty expensive.
Okay, but we also gave them money from other funds besides the ARPA monies. We gave them marijuana monies. We also gave money from what? The ESG, there were some other sources.
I think it was just the marijuana for that.
And we gave money to Salvation Army for basically the same purpose of...
Salvation Army they run it, they do the operation, so they're all the staffing for the operational side, and then RCM, because they're the property owner, they take all of the utilities, they run the security, and they provide all of the portalets. Salvation Army doesn't do any of that, so it's kind of split up how we're operating.
How many people do they serve?
There are, I think, 50 on that site, so they can serve up to 100. I'm not sure what they're at right now.
And they cannot serve 100 people for $200,000?
No.
It's about $1 million a year in operation costs to run one safe outdoor space.
That's only the Salvation Army side of things. So the RCM is an additional.
So is this a loan, or is this a loan?
No, it should be.
If they get the money that was earmarked from Congress, why would we not get that money?
We did not fund them to the amount that they needed because we didn't know they needed this much.
No, I understand that. My question is this a loan? Are we going to get repaid? Because otherwise they get this money plus the other money.
So some of this money will need to go towards some things that they're back-billed on from last year. And then we'll need additional funding from the additional funding coming from HUD will need to go towards the rest of the year.
The HUD money comes to us. So if we use some ARPA money until the HUD money comes in and they don't need as much of the HUD money, we can use the HUD money for another purpose that's similar to this. So we could pay Salvation Army.
It should be written that this is a loan.
Councilmember Coombs.
That I just was trying to clarify, so we're going to send them this money, and then what happens? So they will also receive that money. That's the way that's working, is that they'll receive this money and that money.
So we'll shore up their utility costs that they have been waiting to pay with the ARPA money. When the HUD money comes in, it comes to us, and then they're submitting invoices to us and we're paying them. So we're offsetting some of the HUD money using the ARPA money until we get the HUD money, but as we get towards the end of the year, we may not use all of that HUD money for this purpose because we've used some of the ARPA money. But the HUD money can go to Salvation Army, it can also go to restoration, but we obviously want to use the HUD money first because it's restrictive for this specific site and operations, whereas ARPA money is versatile and we can use it for other things.
Councilmember Lawson.
So I just had a quick question, Jessica, on the And Emma, so looking at their cost, what is this blue room rent for $25,000? Because I hope that the church is not charging for space in their church to rent for stuff. And so what is that?
That's a room owned by, there's a landlord that owns some building, or some rooms next door to the building they own in the strip mall. And they're renting that for use for Salvation Army to be using as their case management, space to store extra supplies, but mostly it's for case management. And they're providing that to Salvation Army, but the lease is under them.
So why isn't Salvation Army paying this then? Because we gave them money as well.
So that's not part of their budget. Their budget is primarily for staffing and food for participants staying there, and a variety of other things, but primarily staffing and food.
You guys make this very difficult to, especially with all of the intermingling. I really don't understand why the Salvation Army, they're renting the room, but that doesn't even make sense to me because they have a space.
Liz, have you been in touch with Congressman Clove's office about this, and what are they saying?
Yes, we've been in touch several times. They are well aware of this issue. They've also reached out to HUD on an official basis as well to get us any update that they can. They noted to us that, again, our application is on review process 2 of 3.
And the earmark does not require an application, that's why I don't understand.
So when we receive the earmark, we have to go through HUD to accept the funds. So we have to kind of apply for our own funding when that's allocated. It is a process. So HUD has to then review our budgetary allocations and our application that we put in to formally receive the CDS funding that we've been designated by Congress.
Further questions or comments? Okay, the action is not required, this is information only, correct?
No, we were asking.
Your action is required, okay. Is there any objection to moving forward? Okay, okay. I've seen the majority in support, it will move forward.
May I say something?
Please.
Yeah, I would like those, I'm objecting because those funds can be used for our citizens, not 50 people.
Same could have been said for all the money for Bob Dorsheimer.
Seeing no other items before the study session of the Aurora City Council for Monday, March 11, 2024, meeting is adjourned.